أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين اللهم أرني الحق حقا وارزقني اتباعه وأرني الباطل باطل وارزقني اجتنابه. Thank you everyone for coming today. Inshallah we're starting on page 200, the book The Words. We are continuing the discussion on the 15th word. The word started off with a verse. Let me repeat it as a reminder. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, and if a suggestion from Satan assails your mind, seek refuge with God, for he is all-hearing and all-knowing. Is everything okay? Okay. Again, the verse is saying, and if a suggestion from Satan assails your mind, seek refuge with God, for he is all-hearing and all-knowing. And the author has been taking us through a conversation he has been having with the devil, as if he's receiving suggestions from the devil on how to view the Quran. And the author is showing us how he at first might have thought that, okay, whatever the devil is saying might be reasonable, but actually it's not. And he's showing us why. So for today, we'll start on page 200 towards the end. He's saying, next, the devil said, so the next suggestion the devil was saying, or I should say the next, a false suggestion the devil was giving was, many people speak of matters similar to those in the Quran in the name of religion. Many people, so many people outside of the Quran, speak of matters similar to those in the Quran in the name of religion. Is it not possible, therefore, that a human being did such a thing and made the Quran in the name of religion? In other words, I feel like the question is saying, well, if man has this capacity to speak of matters that the Quran talks about in the name of religion, then why can't we just conclude that, okay, the Quran is also is made up by man in the name of religion? Okay. If anybody can think of an example of those matters, let me know. The matters mentioned here.
Matter, so example of what? Did you say?
See here it says, many people speak of matters similar to those in the Quran in the name of religion. So I'm wondering if anybody can think of an example like that.
I may come up example.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Sure.
But example on myself, I may come up and say that, you know, God spoke to me, and you should do this. So if I am not genuine, we will get the answers. So I can do that. I can choose this way, but you can check me easily, very easily, because I'm not saying another person. For example, I am, let's say, I come up before the professor enters the class, okay, put my very old bag on the professor's table and say, I am a physics professors. I'm going to teach you physics professor as a physics professor. I'm not. I have nothing to do with physics professors. I'm lying. Can I do this? Yeah, people may think that he's an old guy. Maybe he's a very experienced physics teacher. But of course, there is everybody in the class will have the opportunity to check what I am teaching, whether really confirms that I know physics or not. Right? You can easily know that I am a real physics teacher because I will write something on the, let's say, blackboard or whiteboard nowadays, excuse me. So, and write a formula, for example, it doesn't work. So equation is completely wrong. Or what I'm saying doesn't really make sense. You can check it out. We will try to read the following as how it is replied, but it is easy that I can do this, pretend to be a doctor, and I'm not a doctor, but pretend to be a doctor, and a patient comes, okay, what's wrong with you? Oh, I'm pretty, take this prescription. I take the prescription, it doesn't work. And maybe allergy, makes allergy. Oh, you say he's not a doctor. So it is easy, but of course it comes to my mind, to the people's mind, that somebody may pretend to say something as if he has received this message from the Creator, and as if he is really an honest man, but or not. He can do this, that we can check. That's why we are going to read the following answer, how we can check this person is really a genuine one or just making up a story. But we have to say, we will read from the first step. I can pretend to be a physics professor. I can pretend to be a doctor in order to get some benefit from it. But can I pretend to speak as if I am speaking as a God, the creator of the universe is speaking? Can I dare to do that? That's what we are going to discuss, inshallah.
Thank you very much. That's helpful. Okay, so his response was, through the light of the Quran, I replied as follows. Firstly, out of love of religion, someone who is religious may say, the truth is thus, the reality of the matter is this, Almighty God commands that. But he would not make God speak to suit himself. One more time. Out of love of religion. So if someone loves religion, that means this person has an understanding of religion, has chosen that religion is worthy of love, worthy to be called important, it's valuable. So if that person does love religion, someone who's religious may say, he or she will say, well, the truth is thus, the reality of the matter is this, Almighty God commands that. He or she is not bringing in something to suit himself. He's just saying things as they are, as they appear to him. So he would not make God speak to suit himself. Trembling at the verse, Who then does more wrong than one who utters a lie concerning God? He would not overstep his mark to an infinite degree, imitate God, and speak on his behalf. So it's as if I feel like the author is kind of asking me, well, think about it this way. If you have two people, one person is speaking out of love, he or she will be very careful with what they say. They don't want to make it, they don't want to ruin what they actually love, which is religion. They don't want to manipulate it. They don't want it to appear something it's not. They actually want to protect it. That's out of love. But if I were not to love religion, and instead I just want to speak, I have that desire to speak and have an opinion, then I wouldn't care about religion itself. That's how I see it. Your thoughts on this? Okay.
I think it is clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I say, you know what, I learned from the prophets or from the text, the Quran, and according to this knowledge that I got, God wants us to do this, not to do that, to understand this way or other way. I can say this because I'm speaking on my behalf. But can I say God, as the text says, is beautiful, but he wouldn't make God speak to suit himself. God speaks to me, you see, all my saying will be according to the capacity of God. But my understanding is according to my capacity, which is right. So I can give religious advice as a result of my love for religion. But as a result of my love for religion, I would never dare to speak, to make God speak as if God is speaking when I say the prophets say this. Prophets say that it's not my knowledge. No. God is speaking. As they say it once, that's it. Throughout the 3 years of the message of the prophet, 3 years of the messengership of the prophet, he said, this is what God said, that's it. 23 years, all the life conditions changed. But he said, oh, let me correct it, let me change it. No, preserved in the text. Did he make any draft and then first correction, editing, second editing, last final edition? No, it was impossible, because if God speaks, God doesn't change his knowledge, but God gives direction, teaching according to my life conditions. That is why Quran speaks in this way or this way, depending the experience of the life servant of the prophet and the people with him. So they were experiencing all kinds of life living conditions. Accordingly, guidance says, okay, if the conditions are like this, you have to change in this way. If the conditions are like this, you have to change in this way. Those people who study the Quran and the sciences of the Quran, they confuse Sometimes, not all of them, but they may confuse. We have to be very careful. There are many different instructions, directions in the Quran. Seems to be contradictory to each other. For example, in the Meccan period of the life of the Prophet, God kept reminding the Prophet that be patient, trust in me. I am the best planner. Patient, patient, patient. Now, and living conditions of the Prophet and his followers changed. In the changing position, for example, you are an innocent person. This is an important matter. That's why I'm really taking your valuable time. I am an innocent person. I have no power. I cannot really do anything. For example, I am insulted or I am really harmed by somebody, but because he hit me and ran away, I couldn't get a picture because I was lying on the ground so that I can put the evidence. I go to the judge says, just to get my right back, paid back. God says, where is your evidence? Excuse me, sir, I have no evidence. Why? He came and hit me or somebody, and even I didn't see his face, black man, white man, nothing. Even if I could, what would happen? There are millions of black men, millions of white men on the world. So, because without realizing, I fainted, right? Fainted. And then I woke up. Oh, everywhere is aching, whatever. I'm in pain. No, judge says, no, there is no evidence. I'm not going to pass a judgment for your favor. There is no evidence. But I say, okay, I cannot do anything. I am a poor guy. I cannot defend myself. I cannot pay for the lawyer, etc. That is the life period of Mecca. When it comes to Medina and the Prophet and his followers are now accepted by the community and given the authority to administer the society. What he has to do now, he has to be very careful not to be transgressed anybody's right, because they are in the now responsible position. So the rule says, okay, if someone transgresses another person's life, be severe to him. Don't forgive him because this person really transgressed the right of other person. You have to take the right back. If someone attacks you, you can defend now. Please defend yourself severely with no, how do you say? The word didn't come. No, come on. Giving in, let's say, simple one. Without giving in, defend yourself because you can. In Mecca, you couldn't. That is why you have, I gave you the advice to be patient, to be patient. In these conditions, you cannot do anything. By shouting, insulting people, you cannot get any benefit. Living conditions change, Quran's teaching is change. But the same verses never changed and kept in the Quran. Why? Because it looks like contradictory now when I read it, without taking into the consideration, without taking the context into the consideration, I will say Quran is full of contradictions. No. But the point is related to our subject. If a person says this is from God, it must be valid, universe-wide, eternally. Now, according to life conditions, when you get the right guidance fitting to your living conditions, will you be really, as a human being, satisfied? That is why we have to look at it. That is why there is no way to accept that some verses of the Quran abrogated. It is very irrational understanding as a result of literal reading of the Quran, understanding. That is very dangerous. If something is abrogated, you have to take it away. Why not? It is abrogated. It is invalid, and it is not valid anymore. Why do you keep it? But the Prophet said, no. There will be time. This is the guidance. The time will change. Living conditions will change. This is the guidance. Look at the very simple, and everybody knows this, those people like you who are really familiar with the teachings of the Quran, is aware of this reality that Quran says in the alcohol, from intoxicants, there are some benefits in bracket as you think they are good, feeling comfortable, but some harms. You say, yeah. Because when the people got drunk, they go crazy. They don't know what they are doing. They start beating up the people, especially husbands, beating up their wives, children. Yeah, that is correct. But is the alcohol, intoxicant, whatever is intoxicant, was the intoxicant prohibited that time? No, he said there are some goods that you think, but they didn't say this because they are used to this. They are not prepared to live it completely. They are not mature enough to control their feelings now. They are not aware of God yet. They are not aware of the purpose of their life, the purpose of the existence of their feelings. So their mind needs to be prepared. There are times I think, for example, a new person who's alcoholic. Most of the people were alcoholic anyway. So alcoholic. He said, I believe in God. Okay, he's not alcoholic now. He is not under the influence of the intoxication. He's a brilliant man now. And he said, I believe that really God is correct. And what the messenger of God, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, taught me that universe is transient, everything is going to be destroyed, your life is limited, you are a guest in this impermanent existence, life. So be careful and try to understand your purpose of your life. Says, yes, right, I really believe. Okay, I confirm the message and I become a Muslim. But he has been drinking for 40 years. Can you say, okay, did you take Shahada? Yes, I agree. Then, no, not then. They wouldn't do it. Even the prophet, most of the people around him were following him and drinking alcohol at the same time at the beginning. Like this one, and embraced Islam, now followed a circle of the prophet's message and said, okay, I agree. And of course, we have the whole message now, depending on the living conditions. If we suggest that this prohibition of intoxicant to him, saying that, look, you took the Shahada, no more alcohol. Oh man, on the first day. Educate him as the Quran did educate him, the purpose, how to train him, how to control his feelings, how to change. You cannot change a person overnight. You have to prepare, teach. When you go to school, do you become an engineer on the spot? No. You have to go through 24, 23 years of education. When you feel that,
So this means that like we should just deliver the message as much as we can to the people who are willing to listen and let them decide what they want to do with it, like for their own practical life.
I am not on this line, my friend. I appreciate your comment because I am just concentrating on the point that when, for example, tell him, okay, take the Quran and adjust your life. No, he will say, okay, there is a good thing. No, the alcohol is completely prohibited. He needs to be educated. He needs to be prepared. Look, you are not ready now. Read this verse. And then after a while, read this verse. People need to be educated. But the one who educates must know the living conditions of this person, and accordingly make suggestion. Accordingly, we have to accept human reality, human nature. So it is not easy to change. That is what my line of thinking. So what you are saying, try to be helpful, but the person himself, that's what my friend is, I think, inferring, try to be helpful according to his capacity, his living conditions. Try to be helpful, try to introduce the message as the message is addressing which living conditions it is addressing. Accordingly, suggest the man, look, you are an alcoholic. I know that. Now, the first stage. So, look, read this verse. What does it say? Alcohol, there is some good in it, but also there is bad. You see, think about it. Good side is okay, you are used to it, but bad side is also, take consideration. Education needs a gradual progress. So as far as I am concerned, I have to introduce the religion or teachings of the Quran in an appropriate way. But do I have any power to impose anything on the people? You have to do this and then. And also, as I learned throughout my life, I have to respect the people who are introduced to religion or teachings of the Quran. I have to be respectful that they need to go a gradual education. But do they have to obey me? No. I have to just a teacher. As a teacher, the teacher goes and teaches and tries his or her best, but students are free to learn, to practice or not. Although you may say, you are in the class, you have to learn, but you cannot impose. While you are teaching, he may be texting to his friends. We cannot prevent it. That is why we have to know what mission I have. First of all, I have to learn. Second, I have to present my subject as a teacher according to level and living conditions of the person I am speaking to. I have to be wise enough to make the distinction and benefit from the various ways of teachings of the Quran. If I am not aware of it, if a person embraces the Islam, an alcoholic person, possible, embraces Islam, takes Shahada, if I say to him as a teacher, if you like, if you call me in this position as a teacher at all, it is very doubtful. So you have to stop alcohol, consuming alcohol. I am a very unwise, stupid teacher. That is why to be helpful, if all of us have to be in the service of sharing the truth with those people who need it according to their level, respecting the human reality that they need to be taught gradually. If they listen to you, if somebody doesn't come to class, how the teacher can teach this person? Impossible. But if someone comes to the class, it doesn't mean that I can control his mind, his attention, but I have to give a reasonable, wise advice. He is free to accept it or not. So this matter that I am talking, he would make God speak to suit himself because it is impossible. Okay, but Quran says, I am the guidance from the Quran, from God, but God is supposed to be, by definition, not in contradiction at all. So people's minds are not confused, perplexed, saying, yeah, it shouldn't be any extra correction in it. God doesn't shouldn't correct his speech. The main point is everything is correct according to its living conditions, according to the context of the verses. We have to be careful while we are reading it, rather than saying that, oh, some verses are obligated, okay, if they are really declared as invalid, why the Prophet was so sensitive to keep all of them in the Quran? Why? So no, you cannot change. But, it says something else. For example, why don't we leave the verse which says alcohol is all intoxicants, actually. All intoxicants are 100% prohibited. Leave the other verses, take it out. Confusing. That is so unnatural. That is so unnatural of the real teaching of the Quran. That's why if we don't know exactly how the Quranic wisdom follows, we should not speak on behalf of the Quran. But as my friend, our friend actually, not only mine, but he is your friend as well, emphasized that we cannot impose, but at the same time, okay, this is the Quran, all right, take it, and whatever you want to do it, none of my business. It is not fair. For example, can you just say, I'm going to send my child or children to a school? That's what I did. Come on, let them do whatever they do. But if the teacher is behaving bad, unwise, are you not concerned with it? So you say, I have to take my children to the best school. Wisest teachers must be the teachers of my children. That is why people pay a lot of money if they think that the teachers are wise and prepared. Otherwise,
I think what I wanted to point out is that, and we all do, and especially, in any religion, it's not necessarily just like Muslims, and also like ourselves, speaking for first and foremost for ourselves, it's so difficult to establish a theory or the principles to a point that like people are really convinced that they will go through some sort of revolution in their life and they are going to make a change for their own habits, for their own practices, which is the way of Quran and the Prophet. So since this is extremely difficult, we tend to take the shortcut and try to, against the will of the people, without convincing them first for the principles or what the truth is, we tend to try to change their habits, like in a way by force, and thinking that that is the religious teaching.
That's
And
a perfect point. Yes, that's a perfect point. I agree. Yeah, we have to
and
respect people.
yeah, and like what you were explaining, the verses in Meccan period versus the later period, Quran itself follows this pattern of establishing the principles step by step without forcing people to practice something that they are not completely convinced of.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you, thank you. So what we see now, even when the Prophet was in power, do we see that the Prophet was imposing the Quran or the rulings of the Quran, message of the Quran on people? Why do we keep reading on many occasions in the Quran saying and addressing us, but primarily to the Prophet, says, your mission is only tabligh. You know that tabligh verse. How many times repeated? But you cannot impose on people. Although he was in power, he wasn't imposing his message on people, delivering it, leaving people free, whether accept or not. But if they harm other people, then the Prophet was the administrator. So his mission was to protect, if you like, the rights of citizens. So he was imposing the rule in order to protect the rights of other people, not in order to protect that the Quran must be in power. That is when you do justice in the society, that is what Quran teaches you. But Quran doesn't teach you that you have to go into people's private life and impose your ideas on it and then say that, look, in your house, you have to pray. But the Quran says, you have to pray. You have to pray. That is my suggestion. Take it or leave it. But you cannot really harm innocent people's rights. You cannot come out of your house drunken. But if someone keeps drinking in his house without harming anybody in the society, without being a bad example in the society, walking in the street in a drunken way, as if teaching that it is normal to be like this. So the judge, the administrator, is responsible to protect the rights of the peaceful society. Now, when the same man drinks in his house, what the Quran does only advises him, you should not. That's it. No imposition, no forcing, but just delivering the message. That's it. We have to pay attention to the teachings of the Quran, where we should apply which verse in what context. if you are not prepared and educated about it yourself, this Quran, then or you may know a little bit and teach this area if you really know it. But if you don't know it, don't deliver the message, you will misguide and give a bad impression of the Quranic teaching. So it is very important to help people, to teach people, but if a teacher has not really prepared himself, herself, to teach the subject which is given to him according to the level of his students, her students, then this person should not claim to be a teacher. Then, of course, the administration really realizes it, they will just really fire him. But God says you shouldn't do it, but God leaves me free to do it or not. For example, some people come up and say that, look, we have to now establish Sharia, God's law on earth. On whom? They haven't been educated yet to submit themselves to the God's word, God's law. They say that, yeah, I am a Muslim, but they live just a worldly life. So without educating them to impose the law of them, they would be really deniers of religion. They are harming people. Misrepresentation, being a very bad teacher and really harming the time of the students. We have to be careful. We should not abstain from trying to share the best things I know and be qualified for it, or first learn it. First learn it, and then say something. If not, you are harming God's trust on us, the message. Thank you.
Thank you. Secondly, it is no way possible for a human being to be successful in doing such a thing on his own. In fact, it is completely impossible. So this is the second reason he's giving for why the Quran is not written by person. This time he's just saying it's no way possible for a human being to be successful in doing such a thing on his own. In fact, it is completely impossible. Okay, well, what's the argument? Individuals who resemble one another may imitate one another. Those of the same kind may take on one another's forms. Those who are close to one another in rank or status may imitate one another and temporarily deceive people, but they cannot do so forever. So he's saying, okay, we can imitate one another, but it's only for temporarily. I think the key word here for me is temporarily deceive people, but they cannot do so forever. So if we take the example mentioned earlier, someone can walk in, pretend to be a physics teacher. Sure, you can pretend to be it, but it will only be for a short time. For in any event, the falseness and artificiality in their behavior will show up their imposture to the observant. And I feel like the key word here would be observant. If you're genuinely observing the false physics teacher, you will eventually figure out that the physics teacher was lying, or the so-called physics teacher was lying. and therefore their deception will not last. If the one who is attempting to imitate another under false pretenses is quite unlike them, for example, if an uneducated man wants to imitate in learning a genius like Ibn Sina or a shepherd, assume the position of a king, of course, they will not deceive anyone at all. They will only make fools on themselves. Everything they do will proclaim this is an imposter. So I feel like the paragraph is saying, well, sure, give it a try if you want to imitate, but it won't last, specifically for those who are carefully observing or carefully studying what you're saying. And especially if you're trying to imitate someone who's a genius and you're uneducated, then it will eventually show. Thus, to suppose, God forbid, 100,000 times, the Quran to be man's word is utterly impossible. No rational being can accept it as possible. To do so is a delirium. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Oh, yes. To do so is a delirium, like imagining to be possible, something that is self-evidently impossible, like a firefly being seen by astronomers as a real star for 1,000 years, or a fly appearing to observers in the true form of a peacock for a year, or a bogus common private posing as a famous lofty field marshal, taking over his position and remaining in it for a long period without giving away his deception, or like a slandering, unbelieving liar affecting the manner and position of the most truthful, trustworthy, upright believer throughout his life and being completely unruffled before even the most observant while concealing his fraud from them. Okay, any thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, as you were reading, I remembered one occasion I experienced in my life. I was in a hotel, in a very, but not a hotel, hostel-like places. So it was dark at night. So when I just woke up for any reason, of course, window was open because the window was overlooking at a small forest or wood. So I saw, first the impression was, it's funny, a star is moving. I said, oh, what the stars are moving, and it was really quick. According to the stable, the position of the star was quick. But I said, is it an airplane? No, it doesn't look like an airplane. It is just giving a light and like this, and then stop giving a light. Which kind of star is it? It never occurred to my mind that it could have been a firefly. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know. I was really awakened for a temporary in the middle of my sleep. Okay. So later on, I realized, just a minute, which kind of star it could have been. I said, look, when it went behind the tree, disappeared, and then came again. I said, butterfly. Exactly temporarily, this appearance really cheated me, but even I was in the middle of my sleep, I could recognize it it is a butterfly. It cannot be a star, really. So thank you. That is a good example in my life.
Thank you. All right. Finally, in just the same way, if the Quran is supposed to be man's word, then it has to be supposed, God forbid, that the perspicuous book, I looked up the word, it means clear in case someone needs to know, which is considered to be clearly a most brilliant star, rather a son of perfections, perpetually scattering the lights of truth in the heavens of the world of Islam, is like a firefly, a spurious is another word for fake, sham made up by a counterfeiting human. And those who are closest to it, okay, so we're gonna suppose that this clear book, this beautifully written and carefully written book, is actually made up by a counterfeiting human, or it's actually fake, if we can make that assumption. Then, and those who are closest to it and study it most careful do not realize this and consider it to be a perpetual exalted star and source of truth. Together with this being impossible 100 times over, even if you went 100 times further in your diabolical machinations. Diabolical is another word for devilish. O Satan, you could not make such an assertion. You could not deceive anyone of sound reason. Only sometimes you trick people by making them look from a great distance, thus making the star appear as small as a firefly. Okay. When I first read this paragraph, it made sense to me. Now it's confusing. So if someone has an understanding of what the author is saying, please go ahead. I'll have to reread from and those who are closest to it and study it most carefully do not realize this and consider it to be a perpetual exalted star and source of truth. Together with this being impossible, you could not deceive anyone of sound reason. Only sometimes you trick people by making them look from a great distance, thus making the star appear as small as a firefly. Okay, so is he kind of saying, well, what about those people who are actually studying it carefully? Are they deceived too? Is that the question he's asking? Could they be that deceived? Go ahead.
If you go and into something and just look for a needle, you don't see the big objects there. You don't really, I mean, you see them, but you don't notice them. You are looking delicately into the on the floor or the things there in order to see a needle. You don't see the big picture. You don't realize you saw it, but you don't pay notice to it. If you're in my intention to look for a fault in the book, in the Quran, of course, as I mentioned earlier, when I read a verse saying, you know, there is some good in alcohol, in intoxicants, and you read another one that's why I gave this kind of examples, because certain people, politically oriented people, minded and oriented people, read the Quran like this. Look for a very needle, small needle, in order to see the needle, the mistake. So read the other verse and says it is completely prohibited. And he says, okay, I found it. Because I'm looking for mistakes rather than understanding the general concept. And what the Orientalists, which I studied quite a number of my life with them, what they do, exactly the same. Look at this Quran. God, they don't say Quran, they say Quran. Doesn't matter, but it shows their unfamiliarity with the reality of the Quran. So that's why they say Quran, spoil it. It means intentional. I'm sure, I was with them, not in every person I'm talking about who studies in Oriental studies. One of them is among us somehow studying Islamic studies with this. Good people, bad people, but it's a very slippery area, my friend. She knows herself. Slippery area, be careful. So we watch out. So they say, look, Quran is full of contradiction. But if someone sincerely looks at it, not that he or she will believe in it, no, sincerely investigate what this Quran is essentially reading, then definitely you will find out that from the very beginning to the very end, how during these 23 years of the prophetic mission, how the Quran developed human personality gradually. You teach child at his level, and young man, hot-blooded, a young man, as in teenagers. You have to teach them according to their conditions, and the Quran follows this. If you want to see the big picture, rather than looking for a small mistake, and as soon as you find something appears to be contradictions, then you start shouting. But I must be honest, some of these people are aware, but for their own purpose, political purpose, or prejudice, biased minds, just they don't say that Quran is the really teaching the real truth, but they say we are Christians, we have to divert the attentions of the people from Islam into Christianity. I hated it. Not all Orientalists do that, but really the mission of Orientalist studies is this: divert the people's attentions from Quranic teaching so that they will remain in Christianity, although Christianity, they are well aware of it, is full of inconsistencies in their theories, but they say, or theologies, but they say, okay, in the whole, it is a good religion, humanist religion, so it doesn't teach, they say, war, fighting. It is better. Why? Because they don't want Islam to be understood and just brought some blame, or throw some blame on it, so that keep it away from it. But they know the truth, but they don't say it because of their prejudiced mind. I don't know. I know they study the Quran, but at the same time they study it with a conditioned agenda. That is why we have to be very careful not to read the Bible or Torah in order to find the mistakes in it. No. See the general picture, and if the small points do not consistently adjust to the general picture, you say, okay, there are lots of good things, as the Quran says. There is light, there is wisdom in the Torah and in the Bible. But at the same time, Quran says, be careful. Some things are really, how do you say, played with, adjusted to certain prejudices. Be careful about them, but this Quran says corruption. There are some corruption, but as a whole, don't look for a mistake. But Quran is perfect. They lost their perfection because of the people's messing up with them. Not necessarily that essentially they are really harmful. No, I studied it. They are not harmful. But when you compare it with the Quran, oh, you cannot. So consistent the Quran is. There are many discrepancies there. I mean, even looking at the big picture of the teachings of Torah and the teachings of the available canonical Bibles. Well, be careful. I'm not saying original teachings and the preserved, as much as preserved teachings of Jesus, they are beautiful. But unfortunately, they are not accessible by ordinary people. That is really, I feel, very painful for those people who follow sincerely, billion of people sincerely follow the Christianity, but they are not aware what the texts, available texts, which are really hidden in Rome. Some of them are released, some of them not. So they don't teach that. Canonical 4 Bible. If you read them, you will understand that the effort of Jesus was even there, human written books, these 4 Bibles, the canonical Bibles. Even there, you can understand that Jesus was trying to teach the truth to people, but it is mixed up with other considerations. Edit something, saying, God was next to God was Jesus. Jesus was something. That. It's where you read the Bible of John, you will see at the very beginning, the confusion starts there. But in fact, teachings of the teachings of Jesus is really, really very useful. Sorry, I spoke a lot today. Excuse me. Sorry. Bye-bye.
Thank you. We have one comment that says, we human beings are full of contradictions, so that Quran follows to educate us accordingly. We can say in a way that this reason makes them say maybe Quran is contradiction. I definitely see what you're saying. The first sentence, we human beings are full of contradiction, so that Quran follows to educate us accordingly. Are you saying that the Quran is reflecting or showing us that there are contradictions within us or in creation? We can say in a way that this reason makes them say maybe Quran is contradiction.
I feel that whatever the Dr. Ali gave the examples also, like, because the creator must know that we are full of contradiction. So in this teaching, maybe things might look like contradiction, but because it's educating us, that's why maybe, possibly thinking.
No, I mean, human beings are not in contradiction. I'm sorry, but human beings look for right guidance. They cannot establish what is best for them. They need guidance from their creator according to the purpose of their creation. This point is very important. I can try to do my best, but lots of people are successful in this world without the guidance of the Quran. But where they fail, about the nature of creation, about the ultimate purpose of human beings. That is where the guidance we need. That's why Quran connects everything we do in the world according to the purpose of our creation, which is to realize the purpose of the Creator to create me and keep my purpose according to the capacity of my creation, which is to attach my life for a permanent life, so that my life in this world and a successful life in this world will make sense to me. That is why human beings need God's guidance, Creator's guidance, to use my machine in the best way. I have to follow the user's guide prepared by the maker. Otherwise, I can do something right, something wrong, not because I am full of contradiction, because my capacity doesn't allow me to adjust my life for an eternal life. If I don't know God properly, how can I really, the Creator properly, how can I really make sense of my life, which is given to me by the absolute being, in order to really get ready for the eternal paradise? It is not easy for me to find it. That is why God says, okay, I'm going to guide you without forcing you. Think about it. You will understand the best way. So we are not in full of contradiction. We are really full of perplextions, not being aware of what to do. Exactly what is the best. The best people try to make their worldly life best, but not prepare themselves for the eternal life, because they cannot adjust. They cannot really look at the world from as attached to its creator. So inshallah, I should stop.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you for everyone who's been patient with us. We'll stop here. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alawi, can you stay for a second?
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Sister Radwa, inshallah, I'll see you next week, next Saturday.
Yes, inshallah. Do you want to stop the live streaming?
No.
No, I mean for now, for this one.
Sorry. Did I not, excuse me, for what? Did I not start the live streaming for today's class?
But no, I'm telling you to stop